Hey everyone, it's Brenda back again with another episode of Three Uniques. I'm really excited. I've been following this woman for, I want to say, the last year and a half on Instagram. Not to say that I'm stalking you, but this is Deepshikha Sairam. And Deepshikha is, she's a speaker, she's a writer, and she's a spiritual guide. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Brenda. And I'm so excited and honored to be here.
It's so great to have you on. And like, yeah, we know a mutual coach, and
Mhm.
I started following you, and I just love some of the messages that you send out. Now, you work a lot with women entrepreneurs, I believe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do you support them? Like, what is a spiritual mentor?
Yeah, I'm actually have to gonna go back a little bit. So, and I don't know if you were still following me around the time, but I was a business coach before this,
Okay.
and what I was always very driven to the spiritual side of running a business, and
Mhm.
I truly believe that there is no separating the spirituality and the strategy. In fact, your spiritual nature and your mindset and your inner self informs the strategy, informs what you do in your business, your marketing, your sales, and everything else. And I used to combine them together, but I think the past couple of years have been evolving for a lot of us, right? It has kind of like woken up the consciousness of the world.
Mhm.
And one of the things that it did for me was to really wake up some of my spiritual gifts and how I was ignoring them, among other things that I was pretending to be or overdoing. And so when I kind of started going on this journey, which I call the journey home to self,
Yeah.
um, that I discovered that, my I don't want to call passion because I don't really believe in like passion, but
Okay.
I want to probably say path or purpose
Oh,
or
I like
goal.
that. Yeah.
It felt like a soul mission to guide other women on their journey home to self. So, it was, of course, it's been a long time coming.
Mhm.
It's been a process that span over 3 to 4 years, maybe even longer. Who knows?
Okay. Sure.
Sometimes we do things we're not even aware of. But right now, my business evolved into the spiritual mentoring. So what I help women is to journey home to self. And the self that we're talking about here is, and I always like to kind of differentiate it. There's
Mhm.
a self that we say, which I like to spell it with a lowercase s, so SELF.
Mhm.
And so, for example, if I ask you, who are you, Brenda? You might say, my name is Brenda.
Mm.
I'm blonde. I live in Vancouver. I have a home. My
Right.
home is going through a renovation.
Yeah.
My business name is this. You might list all the things that you identify yourself with. So
Right.
usually we say, I am, or I have, I own, right? Those are the things which are our become our identities. But
Mhm.
the self that I'm talking about here, it has got nothing to do with that. So
Okay.
even if I take away your business from you, even if I
Yeah.
take away, your home from you or your partner from you, everything that you have, your car, your bank account, if I take everything away from you, your self will still stay there. So it's like that true essence of you.
Right.
And most of us, we've been shying away from that self
Mhm.
because our culture and society have told us that it's wrong to be us, right? So I always talk about in our online business industry, everybody doubts about how you should be you in your marketing and you should be authentic. But how can we be authentic if you don't even know who you really are?
Right.
So that's the journey that I aspire and I take women on, is to journey to home to themselves. They're not finding themselves. I always say that you're not a coin that was lost in a jacket pocket. You don't have to find yourself.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
not a piece of cheese that's left behind the kitchen counter for years and years.
Yeah.
You
Scrap.
are you're
Yeah.
not finding yourself. You're coming home to yourself. You've always been there, but
Right.
we've forgotten it, and we put masks of people pleasing,
Yes.
listening to our inner critic, self doubt.
Yeah.
More so with women. Of course, everybody does it, but more so with women. And so the journey home to self is the process of discovering, or I would say remembering, who you are.
I love it. And that's what you've named your podcast as well.
That's what my podcast name is as well. Yes.
Yeah. And that's something that you launched just recently, I think in like early this fall.
I did. I used to have a podcast before this, and I
Okay.
took a break from that to kind of reassess where I
Oh,
wanted to
got it.
be,
Okay.
where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. And this podcast was a natural evolution because I love stories. That's how I teach. And
Yeah.
I love to bring on women who have traveled on the journey home to self,
Hmm.
or they have discovered an aspect of the journey. And my hope is that, by bringing stories of other women who are on this journey, we don't feel that we have to do this all by ourselves. We don't feel very lonely, because the journey can be lonely. It is a very
Sure.
personal experience, right?
Yeah.
Your own inner experience is a very personal but a very lonely experience. But when we know that someone else has gone through the exact same thing, we don't feel so alone in that.
Yeah, and I think the support comes in for sure when, especially when you're hearing other stories from women, is number one, you taking that leap to come home to yourself. There may have been like some hesitation, right?
Of
Some
course.
personal judgment, fear of failing. But then also you might be receiving criticism or questioning from people around you, right? Like, okay,
Right.
why aren't you doing this stuff anymore that we used to do together as a
Exactly.
family or a friend group, or you're working differently, or you're showing up differently, I don't know, wearing your hair differently. But it's just also like you're becoming more authentic, and they're not used to seeing that.
Absolutely. And that's usually what happens. And, I always talk on my podcast how this journey is, I'm very, very honest. And I say to women that it's not going to be an easy ride. If you're
Mhm.
committing to come home to yourself, it's not an easy ride. Yeah, sure, it's easier to follow the rules. It's easier to fit in. It's easier to come home and watch a Netflix binge at the end of the day,
Right.
rather than confronting your own emotions and why you're feeling upset, why you're feeling sad, right? It's easier to not have that difficult conversation, not to set boundaries and always say yes to people please. It's more difficult to do all the other things. So this journey is difficult. And once you enter it, it's going to take you through portals, because what it is just shedding yourself.
Yeah.
It's just shedding years and years of conditioning, years and years of masks, years and years of skin that we have. And while we go through that shedding process, it's life, it's death, rebirth, it's
Mhm.
death, rebirth, right? So that's what we go through in the journey home to self. And it's not easy, but it is absolutely worth taking, because when you and there's no getting there,
Mhm.
there's no arriving.
Yeah.
But when you start to see yourself and you see that, oh, I am, and you know it, and there's this knowing, the soul knowing that I am inherently worthy. My worth is not coming from my business. My worth is not coming from what people say to me when I do an Instagram live, or how many comments do I get, or how many followers do I have,
Mhm.
or how much money am I making, or if my clients are getting results or not. I know that I'm worthy, and I know that I'm worth it to set boundaries, not people please, and not to listen to my inner critic, but listen to my own inner intuition. That feeling is worth it. That feeling of wholeness, that's how I describe it, because that's how I felt it, is not coming from outside of you.
Right.
It's not coming from a dress, a donut, a pizza, a vacation. It's coming from inside of you. And no
Yeah.
matter where you are, you can be in the most disgusting place, you can be in the most uncomfortable circumstances, and you can still feel that, oh, I'm not good with it. I can smell something really bad, or I'm not happy that my flight has been canceled for 12 hours and I'm stuck at this airport, or I'm in this dirty Airbnb and my money has gone. You can still acknowledge all the sucky stuff that happens in life, but
Mhm.
that does not mean that you're not worthy of good things. That
Right.
does not take away from your wholeness. So yeah, so that's the whole process, and
Okay.
it's interesting.
So you yourself have gone through this. Like you were saying that you were a business coach, and now
Mhm.
you've, gone through this journey, and you're declaring yourself as being the spiritual mentor. And this is like something that you've always been, right?
Yeah.
And it's
Mhm.
like you've now, like, you're just fully in your authenticity, like you're grounded, you're feeling whole and complete by it. Was there something, because you just said a few minutes ago, it's not just like you get it, or it's kind of like,
Yeah,
a shock to the system, like a lightning
right.
bolt comes out from the sky and like all of a sudden you transform. Can you talk us through kind of like how you came to that, where it's like, you
Absolutely.
were in this role that obviously you were competent in, you were, doing your business, and you were like making money or feeling like, hey, I could be a business coach. And then
Right.
there was something else that was calling you forward. How did you
Right.
go through that?
Yeah. So first of all, like, there are a few parts to it. So I think in this world where in the three-dimensional world that we live in, we have been conditioned not to kind of discount our spiritual side,
Mhm.
right? If it's religion, it's okay. If you go to church and pray, or if you go to a temple and pray, that's okay. But your
Right.
spiritual side, which is listening to your intuition and
Yes.
even some of the other like mystical concepts, have
Mhm.
been kind of not given that much attention now,
Mhm.
right? If we go back centuries and centuries ago, we go back to Egyptians, we go back to the shamans, and how
Sure.
the communities used to live together. Intuition was an inherent part of it.
Right.
I had my first spiritual, kind of like a spiritual experience, an out of body spiritual experience, when I was 7 years old. But of course, I didn't know it at that point of
Right.
time. And of course, I discounted it. I was like, oh, I just made it up. And I have been super intuitive all my life. I've been spiritual. I didn't understand it. I coded it with religion.
Mhm.
And there was also, when I started to learn more about it, now there's so many books, there's so many people like Eckhart Tolle, Deepak Chopra, Dr. Joe
Right.
Dispenza, who talks about all this stuff, right? They've also included science in,
Yes.
and with spirituality. So now that it's becoming a little bit more mainstream, and I started to kind of realize that, that was what it was. That voice that was speaking to me, that was literally the voice of my spirit guides, and that was the
Yeah.
voice of the goddess. But there was a lot of shame.
Sure.
I had a lot of shame, in accepting, even into my family, that, hey, you know what, I'm intuitive, or I can hear voices, and I see things, and I have these mystical experiences. There's been a lot of shame about around that. So I, I call it this way, that when you're being called on this journey home to self, um, and I work with the divine feminine, the goddess, she will enter you, she will speak through you, she will create portals for you to go on this journey, go on this discovering remembrance journey. But she cannot enter you unless there is a space, a break.
Like, well, even permission, really, from that standpoint, right? Like,
Permission, but we don't really give permission. Like, we all have free will, but like because it's the unknown, it's
right.
uncertainty, like we don't
Okay,
really
got
give
it. Yeah.
permission. But there has to be a portal.
Okay.
And for some people, and that's something that I've been finding common in all the podcast guests that I have on my show, is that each one of us went through we thought it was a breakdown.
Yes.
It was either a financial breakdown, or a relationship breakdown, or a health breakdown. But what it was a breakthrough.
Yeah.
That popular quote, that there's a crack, that's how the light gets in.
Yes.
So when you're broken, you become open.
Yeah.
So that's what started happening to me. It started with my mom's death, which was about 5 years ago now.
Okay.
And I didn't know, but that was the opening.
Right.
And when that opening came in, I started to recognize my spiritual side more and more. And then, of course, I was in this business coaching world. And you're right, I was top of my game, published in lots of, popular media outlets. I made very quickly multiple six figures in 2 years. So I was doing really, really well. But there was a part of me which was like, but I'm not happy.
All right. Yeah.
Who am I? Like, what is
Yeah.
my real purpose? Yeah, great. I'm great at my job. I help so many people. I've made so much money, but there's still something missing. And that is a very essential question, which I also notice that, a lot of women ask themselves, who am I? What is wrong in my life right now?
Is this all
What
there
is
is?
my purpose? Is this all
That
it?
was my question. That was my question. And then I feel
Exactly.
bad to ask that because it's like I had the home and the kids and the husband and the job and it's just like and the great dog and nice Christmas card photo, all that stuff. And it was like, is this
Totally.
all there is? And I would be like whispering that because shame to want
Right.
more.
Exactly. So those questions I was asking myself, but I was so attached to the matrix, the
Right.
three-dimensional way of running our life and business, so attached to the material. Like, my business was my identity. And,
Hmm.
I had an origin story where I was a stay-at-home mom. Um, you know, Before I started my business, I used to get pocket money from my husband, and I started my business on my own and went from zero to multiple six figures in 2 years.
Right.
Um, supported my husband in buying our dream home. So this was my story. It was amazing at that point, but it also became my identity.
Mm,
So I was nothing without my business. So if my business had a slow month, it was my worth that I was questioning.
right.
If my clients did not get results or something went wrong, it was my capabilities that I was questioning. There was no difference between my business identity and my identity. It
Hmm.
was so entwined together.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, we all have, trauma from our childhood, some of the things that we've still been carrying through. So, long story short, there were things that were happening in my life one by one, and which to me looked like breakdown. Like every month there would be something that would happen, like a
Yeah.
client would, go off, or I would get a bad review, or
Yeah.
something would happen in my life, my health started deteriorating, like things started just happening. Now when I look back, it was the goddess saying, look here,
Yeah.
pay attention. So when I started really paying attention, and I call this sitting in your muck, right? You really have to. And we're very scared of looking at our own shit. We're
Mm,
really, really scared, and we do everything to avoid it. We suppress our feelings. We do everything to avoid the irritability or the anxiety or the grief that we are holding on to, or the trauma that we are holding on to. And I had that for years and years. I had some childhood trauma. I had still not processed the grief of my mom's sudden passing, and there were these patriarchal messages that
right.
that were inherent in me, that my bank account number is my worth. If that number is not increasing, that means I'm not worth anything.
Right.
So there were so many things that were kind of like circling around me, and I was avoiding it. I was avoiding it with excessive social media. I was avoiding it with excessive cleaning. I was avoiding it with Netflix binges. I was avoiding it with going out way too much. And
Hmm.
we all have our ways where we avoid it,
Yeah.
right? And it literally felt like I was being forced to look at things, because no matter how many bandages I tried to put on my life and my business, things were breaking down. So I then decided that I'll sit with my muck. And Brenda, it really felt like I was in a tomb. It was very, very scary
Yeah.
to face your fears, to face your trauma, to face your sadness, your anger, your everything. It was super scary. I
Mhm.
felt like that's the only thing that I can describe it as. It felt dark. It felt scary. It felt like anything that can just pop out of anywhere. You know how, like, when you go to these Halloween tunnels, and
No,
there's
I don't do those things anymore. Like those zombie things where everyone's jumping out at you, like from the
exactly.
yeah, like those zombie attack movies and TV
Right,
shows.
right,
Like,
right.
no,
But
like
that's exactly how
yeah.
it felt like. It felt like I was in this enclosed space.
Uh-huh.
And it was the unknown. I did not know what was happening to me. Did not know where the end would be, right? I didn't know what's the end to the suffering. And I was in a meditation that day, and that's something that has been consistent in my life for the past 5 to 7 years, is that I
Mhm.
meditate continuously, and it works for me. I do other things as well, but meditation has definitely been, my go-to.
Right.
So I was in a meditation, and it was almost like a voice spoke to me, and it said, "What if you're not in a tomb? You're in a womb."
Hmm.
And as soon as I listened to it, it was like something changed inside of me, and I kept repeating it to myself: "You're not in a tomb. You're in a womb. You're not in a tomb. You're in a womb."
Hmm.
Because you see, you in a tomb, it's dark, it's scary. In a womb, it's still dark and scary, but you're being held and you're being nurtured.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're in gestation. You know that the journey might be uncomfortable, but you are going to come out the other way,
Right.
right? So, and again, it's almost like the walls of the tomb, they soften up and they round off, and now you're cocooned. Now
Right.
you're safe,
Yeah.
right?
It's
And so,
warm and cozy and soft.
right. And I make it sound like it happened in a moment, that it turned from tomb to womb. It did not. It was months and months of
Right.
me continuously going back, sitting in the muck, but also telling myself that no, it's not a tomb, it's a womb. I'm
And
thinking.
probably listening too. Sorry to interrupt, but probably listening because, like you said all along, like that message was probably already there. It was already
Absolutely.
saying that to you. But again, the way sometimes our brain works, it's looking for harm, it's looking for danger. It's
Right.
it's like, is this dangerous? Is this harmful? And it's just like it just glides over things. And it's like, wait, wait, wait,
Absolutely.
wait, wait. Like let's go and explore that a little bit more. Oh, tomb, womb.
Yeah.
you know, and like listening to that, right? So
Right.
that's the beauty of meditation. It just opens up
Oh,
already powerful
yeah.
thoughts that you have about yourself that you're just not listening to right now.
Absolutely. And it's been proven by brain science. There is a particular function in our brain. It's called reticular functioning. It's like, when you buy, let's say, a red Ford
Mhm.
Fiesta, you start seeing red Ford Fiestas
Yeah.
everywhere. And you feel like, oh my God, I'm like manifesting. You're not really manifesting. It's a
No.
brain function, right? Your brain is now focusing on that and it's growing. So we are conditioned to focus on our inner critic. So
Hmm.
when the inner critic speaks to us, you're not good enough, you're not worthy, you're ugly, you're fat, you can't do this, you're too old for this, we are focused on that. But when you turn your attention and focus on that inner voice of yours, the brain focuses on that. And that grows. And
Hmm.
when that voice grows, my experience was that when my inner voice grew, it wasn't like my inner critic stopped talking to me, but she got quiet,
Right.
right? She would talk to me, but then I would turn my attention to my inner voice. So it was like, she was like, okay, she's not listening to me. I'm going to go to sleep. I'm
Right.
tired. She's not listening anymore. And then the more I listened to my inner voice, the more she guided me out of the womb. And when I and again, like, there's no arriving, because we are always evolving, right? We are always, and I have been in this on this journey now for so many years, but there's still a few things that I go through, every once in a while. There are more lessons to learn, there's more coming home to yourself. But once you figure out your way around it, and you see me, I'm making a lot of, like, hand
Hand
gestures,
gestures. Yeah.
and I see it as an infinity sign. I actually wear a necklace with,
Oh, yeah.
I see it as an infinity sign, because you're always on the journey.
Right.
Once you know what the journey is like, you have the tools,
Hmm.
whether it's spiritual tools or psychological tools or mind body science based tools, then you can go in and out of it faster.
Right.
Otherwise, you stay stuck,
Yeah. Stuck in the muck.
stuck in the muck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. So this brings us kind of to the conversation about your three uniques. Or let's
Uh-huh.
talk about your three uniques, because probably through that discovery, I'm expecting like there's some things that you've always known about yourself that are unique, and maybe
Mhm.
some things that just like got raised to the surface because you've done this, really deep exploration into yourself. So,
Right.
yeah, what would you say are the three things that make you unique?
Yeah. So I think my first thing that I would say is that, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm bragging, but and we talked a little bit about this in the beginning, but I'm a manifester, a 3x5 manifester in human design. And if
Okay.
your listeners are aware about human design, it's kind of like your blueprint of who you are.
Right.
And I love, using human design and guiding women back to themselves as well. And my human design is literally supposed to be the initiator. I'm the first one on the line. I
Right.
am like Katniss Everdeen from Hunger Games saying, I'll be the, what was that, tribute? I'll be the tribute.
Right.
And I think that's unique about me, is that I go to places where people are afraid of going, um, because it is scary.
Hmm.
So I would talk about that courage piece. So, for example, when I moved to the US about 15 years ago, I was back in India working for Bank of America. I was you know in the learning and leadership department, and I wanted to write a fiction book. And I just didn't start writing a fiction book like other people do. I quit my job cold turkey to write
Wow.
my book,
Okay.
right? We move countries like that. I just started my business like that. I just decided I'll start my business on a toilet one day, and I started it, without even thinking.
Yeah.
And then, I burned down my business coaching business. I just didn't do it the way other people do, that, oh, I'm going to like transition, I'm gonna
Yes.
like, um, take some clients here, take some clients here. That does not work for me. I have this whole burning down, and I will jump, and then I will figure out how I'm going to make the parachute. So I think that's what's unique about me.
Right.
I feel like it sounds like braggy to me, to my ears, but I'll own it up to
No,
it.
Well, and this is why I have the Three Uniques podcast. I'm like, come on and talk about what
Brag
makes
about
you unique,
yourself.
right? Because
Yeah.
it kind of goes back to like we're conditioned not to talk about what makes us unique and different and special and great. And then
Right.
we just follow the path that we're supposed to. I don't know. And I'm not knocking other jobs out there, but we have to become an accountant, lawyer, doctor, right? Because our parents told us to do that.
Right.
And I'm like, what makes you unique? And go do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Totally.
love and I love the fact that you're saying, like you're a manifester, you're right there on the front line, you initiate, you're courageous. So people out there that are like that, it's like,
Hmm.
okay, look what she did. Like I mean, it's just like you quit your job, you wrote a book, like you started a business, you moved, across the globe. Like, go.
Right. I just want to point out that I did not write the book. It's another story. I got pregnant, so I never wrote that book, but I did
Okay.
quit my job to write the
Okay.
book.
All right. Okay, but that's cool. I love the fact that so you're the initiator, the manifester, the courageous, like jump in and go do it. What's
Right.
your second unique?
I would like to say my intuition. I'm highly, highly intuitive, and of course, I've used it for myself and my business, but I've also used it for my clients' business. And I remember that sometimes I would tell them to do something, and it wouldn't really make sense. And there's some people who don't do it, but most of them would. They came to me to listen to me to get coached by me, and they would do it, and they would get such amazing results. And we couldn't, after that we couldn't really see what happened, but it was my intuition speaking to me. So I'm highly, highly intuitive. I have this way of working with people, and guiding them to what would work for them, whether it is business or even relationships sometimes.
I love it. I love it. And your third unique?
I would have to say, my ability to guide people from the darkness to the light.
Hmm.
So I think that was something that was relieved to me in my womb. And again, as a manifester, and I'm also I see pictures. That's how I get my intuitive downloads. I had this picture of me carrying a lamp in the underground and carrying people, guiding people
Guiding
up.
people.
So, sitting with the terror of the unknown, of the underground,
Hmm.
and then guiding people towards their light, towards the up. And I was actually shown a pyramid. I'm really connected to the Egyptian lineage. I was shown a pyramid, and most people know that the pyramid is triangle, but a lot of people don't know that pyramid actually goes underground, the same height, actually even more underground.
Right.
And the underground was how in the ancient Egyptian um, era were how they used to hold mystery schools. They used to mentor priests and priestesses, and
Mm.
guide people to consciousness, and the whole work happened underground. So I have a deep remembrance of that. I'm a priestess myself. So I think that's my uniqueness, that I'm able to guide people in a way that they're not getting lost there, they're not getting stuck in the muck, but
Right.
they're moving towards their greatness, their highest potential.
I love it. I
Thank
love all
you.
this like deep, insightful work that you are sharing with us and that you've explored for yourself.
Thank you so much. It does really feel like, wow. I remember, a lot of people when I was doing business coaching, they would say, "Oh my God, I found my purpose." And I used to say that too. Well, this is my purpose. This is my purpose, because my purpose was always to work with women and guide them towards their greater good.
Mhm.
But there was a part of my business coaching that I always wanted to quit.
Mhm.
And I remember someone I knew, she was like, "But it's difficult, it's hard, but I never want to quit. It's so good." And I'm like, "Oh my God, there's something wrong with me. I want to quit this every single day." But that's how it feels like right now. And I'm not going to say that it's easy every day. It's very,
Yeah.
very hard, especially when you're pivoting, and preaching this to a world that is so clued into the material, that is
Yes.
so clued in, that is like so scared of stepping into the unknown. Telling people to do that is, I feel like there's a block that people
Yes.
have.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not easy, but I think that's my soul mission for sure.
I love that. Yeah, I love I mean, the definitely the climate that's out there is like, how do you get to six figures? How do you get to seven
Right.
figures? Like, super fast. And it's like, you can, like, you're a great example of that, where it's like in 2 years you were there, which is amazing. I did a similar thing when I quit my corporate executive job, and I took a year off to do the deep work and the thinking and kind of navigate through some stuff that was going on in my life. And then I started my business, and right away I started a consulting practice, grew it to multi six figures within like a year.
Right.
And then I was just like, okay, now what?
Round what? Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, do I want to continue doing that? And there were some things in that business model that I had that, like, I didn't really
Right.
like anymore.
Same.
And
Same.
that was sort of the reasons why I also left the corporate executive world. And I'm like, okay, I have this rare opportunity to do this. Like, there are people out there, like we've just talked about, that are stuck in the muck, and I was one of them. And I was just sort of treading around, and then I got myself out, and it was just like, but I'm still not fully doing like my potential, like what I'm here on the planet to serve and do. And so, yeah, I dropped the consulting business. I started a podcast called Three Uniques. And then
Amazing.
and people are like, what are you going to do with that? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just going to interview people over the next year, see
Yeah.
what makes them unique, and then figure out what I do with that. And
I love
so I
that.
did that too, right? And it's just like, I didn't make any money with it. It wasn't about like making money. It was just like, it's going to come to me. It's going to come to me, and just listen for it and listen for it. And then you'll know.
And it will. I was exactly in the same position. In fact, the first part of my this journey, I was like, okay, now I know that I want to do the spiritual mentorship, and I'm just going to start and do it. And that's where we mistake it. We,
Mhm.
our purposes aren't really revealed. They're not handed to us on a plate.
Yeah.
They're
With a
revealed.
10-point checklist. Yeah.
Exactly, or like a three step method. They're
Hmm.
revealed to us slowly by slowly. Sometimes there'll be a little piece here, a little piece there, but it's not going to be revealed to you unless you're truly um absorbed in it, so much so that you actually forget that it is your purpose and you have to make money with it, but you're just so fully enamored with it. You're
Hmm.
like, I cannot do anything, and this is moving through me. It's like, creative force moving through me. So
Right.
I commend you on doing that, because I know I've done that, and it's not easy. And I also made my multiple six figures listening to and doing strategies that the coaches told me that, oh, do this and you'll make like six figures in a year, and it happened. But then when I got there, I was like, oh my god, I busted my ass for this.
Yeah.
I don't, and I remember the day when and I hit my multiple six figures. I was renewing the contract with my coach, who was great. And she was like, we're going to get you to seven figures next year. And I'm like, no, 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 wait, can I just stay there here for a little bit?
Yeah.
Because this has been so fucking hard. I'm sorry. I hope I'm allowed to.
Sure,
Because
you're totally fine.
this has been so hard to get to here. Imagine how much harder it is going to be to get to seven figures. I don't know, even I even want that. I've sacrificed my social life, my peace, for what? So I totally hear you, and I would say it. I started the podcast just for that. And I was like, I want to do this. I don't care what happens. How long do I run it for? I don't have any strategy around it.
Hmm.
I just want to get this message out there
Right.
and get as many people as I can as proof that it's possible to feel that feeling of worthiness, that feeling of wholeness. And I don't know if I will be doing this 10 years from today. I don't know I'll be doing this 2 years from today.
Right.
We have no way of knowing what's in store for us. But as long as we are following that inner voice and we trust that the voice is guiding us to our higher purpose, it'll not lead you astray.
Yeah, she knows.
She knows.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. I love that. Um, what is, like, you talked about meditation, but like,
Mm-hmm.
what are some practices that you use to kind of keep yourself focused, right? Because it's so easy. You talked about like the Netflix binging, like,
Yeah.
what are some things that, like, like, not to say like what are the things that distract you, but when you're feeling that pull, when
Yeah.
you're tired or whatever, and it's just like, what are the things that you do, like your kind of top three go-tos,
Yeah.
that keep you aligned?
Yeah. So first of all, like I have nothing against Netflix binges. I do those too.
Yeah.
And other things like social media scrolling or shopping addictions or anything.
I
I
see
feel
that
like
you like I do see that you like Stranger Things too. So
I do love
yeah.
Stranger Things.
My kids got me into it this year. So
Really? Oh,
yeah,
that's
did some binging for sure in the summer.
yeah, none of these things are bad. However, you have to ask yourself if you're doing those things to avoid
Hmm.
feeling.
Yeah.
So that is my go-to. That is my number one go-to, and everything else comes later. For me is, my mentor taught me, it's called The Art of Allowing. Actually, my podcast, which is it's the episode that's coming out next tomorrow, is
Okay.
about the same thing. The thing that I call sitting with the muck, she calls it the art of allowing. It's allowing yourself to feel the emotions. So whenever I feel that stuckness, and we have been told, we've been lied to, that
Hmm.
motivation is consistent, that productivity is consistent,
Yeah.
right? That production is consistent,
That's
but
that's
it's
all
not.
yeah, that's all from the 1800s and like industrial revolution and
Exactly.
how do we mobilize the masses? Yeah.
Totally. That's bullshit,
Yeah.
right? So your motivation is not going to be consistent. There's nothing wrong with you. Your productivity isn't going to be consistent. There's nothing wrong with you. The output isn't going to be consistent. There's nothing wrong with you. So first of all, understanding that and realizing that, oh, I'm tired today, so I'm going to rest. Most of us feel guilty for resting, right?
Right.
We don't treat rest as replenishment, but we feel guilty. We don't make our kids feel guilty when they need a nap,
No, my teenagers like sleeping until 12. I'm like
right?
holidays and Saturdays and I'm like busy cleaning or something.
Yeah, we don't make them feel like little kids feel guilty when they need a nap during the day or when they're
Yeah.
tired. But we who are working, some of us are moms, some of us have care, parents to care,
Hmm.
or pets. We feel guilty if we have to take a nap. So that's the first tool that I allow myself to feel all the emotions. And I am also very in sync with the moon cycle. So, my moods depend on what the moon is doing.
Right.
And new moon time for me is hell. Like, I feel a lot of emotions when it's new moon. And it's literally every month I will be like, oh my God, I'm so angry today. I am so angry. And then I'll go to my moon app and I'm like, oh, it's the new moon. Okay, get it. But then I don't avoid it by going on a Netflix binge. I allow myself to be angry. So whether it is literally screaming into a pillow. I was like driving on Saturday and I was screaming in the car and crying or screaming in the shower, or, I have done this, I've taken, things that I can throw on the floor to break, like cheap plates
Oh,
I
awesome.
bought at the dollar store, and you
Yeah.
throw them to, get through your rage. Whatever works for you. Feeling those emotions, because emotions are energy in motions. They need to be processed. They need
Yeah.
to move through your body. Our children show us that when they're little kids, they just cry and cry and cry. And once they've cried, it's over. They're
Yeah.
done. They
Yeah.
don't stress about it for months and months, right? They don't even remember what their tantrum was all about. Once the emotion has moved through the body, it's gone. So that's my number one go-to, is whenever I'm feeling the discomfort or the stuckness or lack of motivation, I
Hmm.
just allow myself to do it. Today was like that. I didn't get any work done today. I was feeling kind of pissy, kind of ragey. So I just allowed myself. I journaled, which is again another thing that you can do.
Right.
Sometimes, like today, I didn't really feel like meditating because I was in that kind of mood. But my second go-to is meditation. And meditation is something that, again, a lot of people say meditation doesn't work for me. And meditation isn't it's not a car,
Yeah.
you know.
You don't turn it off. It gets you somewhere and you turn it off.
Exactly,
Yeah. No.
right.
Yeah.
it it'll work for, it's like it's a tool. If you
Hmm.
use it, it'll work for you.
Yeah.
If you practice with it, it'll work for you. If it doesn't, then it's okay. Go find
Yeah.
another tool or practice it more.
Yeah.
So meditation is definitely something that works for me. And the reason is because meditation is supposed to, like you were saying at
Hmm.
that time, that it's supposed to get you in that theta beta zone where the critic quiets down and
Yes.
you can listen to your inner voice.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think my sort of feelings generally around meditation is like, how do you know it's not working?
Right.
And it's just like
Exactly.
trust the process that it is working. And
Yeah.
yes, there is like all this neuroscience research to say that it does work
Yeah.
if you keep up with it. But even if you start it the first time, like again, if we have this, because we're conditioned into cause and effect or A to B results. So it's kind of like,
Exactly.
I start the car, I drive to the supermarket, I turn off the car, there's a result. I'm at the supermarket. But it's just it's not that way. It is that way. You start meditating, you end your meditation and you go on your day. Who's to say it wasn't working?
Exactly. I follow Dr. Joe Dispenza very, very closely. I've been to his retreat as well.
Okay.
And he has done phenomenal work in bringing neuroscience
Hmm.
to meditation.
Hmm.
So he talks a lot about the scientific aspect of meditation.
Yes.
And he says that there is no such thing as a bad meditation.
Hmm.
And even people who are very experienced meditators, and I don't consider myself as an experienced meditator. Yeah, I do meditate almost every day for at least, an hour and a half. And even then, I have some days where I just cannot focus. My mind is buzzing,
Right.
but I never get out of it and say, oh, I am not good enough
Right.
because my meditation is bad. There is no such thing as a bad meditation. It is meditation. It is practice,
Hmm.
right? Just like anything else. Even when you're driving, one day you're going to be like, oh, my drive was so smooth today. One day you'll be like, oh, today I hit traffic jam. Today I hit potholes. That's the thing with everything. So that's my second thing. And the third thing I would say is, like I mentioned to you, I'm deeply connected to the divine feminine. I've been mentored as a priestess, and there are a few rituals that I practice with that. There are these energy based rituals, whether it's transmuting your energy, whether it's cutting cords or calling in higher light. So there are these rituals that some of them I've learned from my mentor, some of them that were given to me in my meditations. And I don't really do them every day. Some of them I do, there's some like, quick things that I do every day, but some of them I do it need basis. So those are definitely my three go-to.
Amazing. It's been so great talking to you today. I've
Oh,
learned so
thank you.
much.
It's been so great talking to you.
It's
Thank you
kind
for
of
being
like my hero call. Like I've been looking forward to connecting with you, and what better way to do it is through the podcast. But like I said, and to everyone, I was when we first started, that I've been following you on Instagram for probably over 18 months now, 18 almost 2 years, and I love what you put out there, and I love the transformation that you're going through, and I'm just so excited that you were able to come on today and share more about yourself and your three uniques.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And I really think that you're doing a great job in bringing people and talking about their uniques, because I was feeling pressurized and like, oh my God, am I bragging? And I think that's what we need
Yeah,
from people
just
to
like bring them
come on
forward.
and really face it. It is coming home to ourselves to
Yeah.
face and talk about our uniques as well. So thank you for doing that work as well. And thank you for having me. Such a
You're
pleasure.
welcome. I have one last question for you before we
Yeah,
go.
of
And then I
course.
want you to also share where people can find you. But my last question is, if I was to give you a billboard and you could put
Hmm.
anything on it and it could be anywhere in the world, what would you put on it? And what would it like, yeah, what would you put on it and where would it be?
What would I put on it and where would it be? Um, well, I live very close to New York City, and New York City is like my love.
Yeah.
So I think I will put it on Times Square,
Okay.
and I think I would put "Come Home to Yourself."
Nice.
Yeah.
Love how that just landed because it's what you do. So I love that.
Right.
Yeah. And so where can people find you?
Well, on Instagram, I'm by my name, Deepshikha Sairam. I, of course, have a podcast. You can listen to it on anywhere you get podcasts. It's called Journey Home to Self. We also have a podcast Instagram account by the same name, Journey Home to Self, where not only do I share some content related to the episodes that we do, but I also do an episode breakdown every Friday. So I go into details of that episode, and I love to share tools with people. It's
Mhm.
not just about telling you what the journey is, but also giving you tools so that you can start your own journey. So I do that on Fridays at 11.
Nice.
Yeah, listen to the
Awesome.
podcast. Come say hi to me on Instagram. Connect if you feel like.
Thank you. So Deepshikha, thank you so much for being on today. I really appreciate you sharing your three uniques. And for everyone listening, remember to get out there and share yours. I always say this at the end of the podcast. There's 7.8 billion people on this planet. Share your three uniques. Somebody needs what you've got.
Totally. I love that. I love that message. Totally.
Okay.